Welcome to this week's episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. On this week's episode, we will look into how people will hate us anyway. So why do we even care anymore? Let's get started. Most of my listeners by now have probably heard the news of what's been going on in Israel over the last week. There are three major things that have happened this past week that I feel we need to talk about. Firstly is the fact that the IDF has called up over 10,000 troops in order to eventually end that war completely and destroy Hamas once and for all. The second thing we have seen is what's going on in Syria with the Druze community. Over the last week, we've seen the Druze people of Syria be massacred, humiliated, taken hostage, and this doesn't go unnoticed by the Israelis, who see the Druze as a partner and a fellow minority in the area that needs protecting. And lastly, and most recently, was when a Houthi missile hit just near Tel Aviv airport in Israel. These things on their face may not seem to be connected in any way other than the fact that it's happening sort of within Israel. But it got me to thinking, when I was speaking to one of our followers, about how this all kind of ties together with what Israel's response is going to be to a number of these issues. And what is extremely interesting, when this follower wrote me a message saying, what's Israel going to do next after the missile hit near Tel Aviv airport, and how Israel needs to react, but then they'll probably get in trouble for reacting. And it led me to realize that this person is right, that no matter what Israel does, they're always wrong. This isn't news to us. We know that pretty much anything everybody else does is fine, but when Israel does the exact same thing or less, they're criticized for genocide or ethnic cleansing. It's kind of par for the course now. But it really made me think, when I was speaking to this follower, that this podcast topic is something worth talking about. This double standard we've talked about endlessly on this podcast. But what we haven't talked about, and what I'm going to try and talk about on this episode, is why do we care? When it comes to the recent attack by the Houthis, and of course the international media and everybody around the world couldn't care less that this happens pretty much every day now in Israel. The only difference is that this time the missile actually made it through the defense systems after the Israelis tried to knock it down 7 times and apparently weren't able to knock it down. The Israelis are going to have to fight back. We know the US has also been hitting the Houthi targets, but this is more than a valid reason for the Israelis to go and pretty much do scorched earth on the Houthi rebels. And yet, Israel has to maybe think about if they're going to be blamed for it. How dare they? We all know the world doesn't care when Israel gets hit by rockets, or even attempted to be hit by rockets. The world thinks, as long as they didn't hit the ground or kill anybody, it's like it never happened. No need to respond. But now that one of them has actually hit the ground, I guess they're going to be allowed to fight back. So at some point when Israel does fight back, you can guarantee that the world is going to be crying for the poor Yemeni people who are being destroyed by the Israelis for no apparent reason. But Israel really needs to do what it has to do to protect its own people. In an earlier podcast, if you want to go back and listen to it, it's episode 126, It's Time for a Regime Change. We talked about how the world has apparently called for regime change in Israel, thinking that that's the problem here. Except in that episode, you will find out, no matter what side of the spectrum the Israeli government is, in the end, peace negotiations never seem to work, and terrorism and hatred towards Jews will always end up happening. And for some reason, I guess, either public pressure or for whatever reason, the desire to do the right thing according to Western standards, Israel continues to try and make deals with these terrorists. They continue to try and seek for peace or ceasefire rather than just total destruction of our enemies. And I think it's only been proof that the attempt by the international world to push us towards a certain ideology, towards peace and negotiation and making deals with terrorists, is the way to go. That's the way for peace, despite the fact it literally has never worked. So while the IDF is currently planning their strikes against the Houthis and apparently possibly even Iran for supplying the Houthis with weapons, the world is sort of hoping we just go back to trying to make a deal and trying to make a ceasefire in order to stop them. Clearly, that's not working, and maybe Israel should stop caring about what the international world says and starts doing what's best for Israel, despite the backlash. And this leads us to a second point from this podcast, which is the Druze community in Syria. Israel has recently airdropped ammunition and food and support to the Druze people in Syria who are defending themselves. And I think that's incredible, especially considering how many Druze that we are protecting currently in Israel. It is only fair that despite the border created by war and or colonizers, that some Druze minorities are not left to die under the Islamic extremists. According to some reports, many Israeli Druze soldiers, so these are Druze Israelis who serve in the IDF, are literally waiting to go into Syria to go and help defend their brothers and sisters. And I think that's incredible. And hopefully soon, Israel will be able to figure out the best way that they can support the Syrian people, aside from airdrops and airstrikes. But you might be asking, why is Israel hesitant to go into Syria and do what we know is right, protecting minorities? And the answer is the international pressure. The same international pressure that they're talking about when it comes to what we should do with the Houthis. Israel is now concerned what's going to happen when our troops cross over the Syrian border in defense and possibly, for the lack of a better word, occupy parts of Syria in order to defend a minority group. We might know that that is the right thing to do. That is the most humane thing to do. Defend a minority that cannot defend itself. However, the Israelis have in the back of their mind all of these trolls that are saying that Israel is trying to, quote, take over the Middle East, despite the fact that we haven't actually grown our land and only given up land over the last 70 or so years. But still, they call us occupiers and colonizers and looking to make, quote, greater Israel, which is a pathetic talking point. I guess we're waiting, 100 years to take over the whole region? One of these days we'll get around to it. But the simple fact that they make these claims is what makes Israel have to hesitate. We need to not only come up with a plan to help the Druze people, but we have to do it in a way that does not seem to appear like we're doing what the other side lies and says we do. And personally, I think maybe we need to stop thinking this way. I think the Israelis need to say, I don't care that they're going to call me a colonizer and an occupier and that I'm stealing land because it's the right thing to do. And to be honest, in the end, if we do it or not, they're still going to call us occupiers and taking over the land anyway. So what benefit is it to not do it so that way people won't call us these things that they're already calling us before we even do it? So maybe we should stop caring. This goes exactly the same for the people of Yemen. If people are going to claim we're destroying Yemen for no reason, this is the greater Israel plan to randomly steal pieces of land for no reason, then who cares if they're going to call us that before or after the airstrikes that take out the Houthis that are currently shooting missiles at us? Once the Houthis are gone, or the Druze are finally safe in their homeland, then maybe we can deal with the bad PR. And the last thing that I had mentioned earlier in the podcast about the 10,000 troops being called up to go into Gaza also plays into this same issue, which is the fact that Israel has never been allowed to win a war based solely on the fact that if they win a war, they might be called ethnic cleansers, colonizers, genociders. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they already call us that. So we have spent over a year, put IDF soldiers in danger, had multiple ceasefires back and forth, only to lose more soldiers trying to regain land we already got, all so we can look good on the international world, so people won't call us colonizers and genociders and killing Gazan people for fun. This is all a game to try and make Israel think twice before ever acting, because the world pressure is going to try and stop them from pretty much existing or surviving. Any act of defense from the Israelis, anything short of just allowing anyone to come in and kill their people, is seen as some type of oppression or occupation or genocide of somebody else. And if they're going to say and think that about us anyway, then why are we tiptoeing around and why are we not just doing what we need to do, the best thing for us, and then worry about the consequences later? It really is a shame to say that their PR, their protests, Their BS at the UN and all these other places is kind of working. That Israel has to think twice about what they're doing, to think about, one, surviving or doing what they need to do for themselves, but then also thinking what the other countries around the world are going to think. What kind of double standard are they going to put on us? And then possibly doing less than what they need to do to survive in order to maintain some type of show that we're peaceful and that we want to make deals with people who want to kill us. The follower that I was speaking to about this asked a very funny question as an American. Does anybody care that America is destroying Yemen and the Houthis? And my answer to them is no. Because not only does everyone sort of expect the United States to do whatever it needs to do for itself, the funny thing is, Israel needs to learn from the United States in the fact that they don't need to apologize for doing the things that they need to do to defend themselves. Israel needs to learn from the United States one very important thing, and that is to not give a fuck about what other people are saying and just do what's best for themselves. Stop trying to appease everybody and just do it. And that is why no one cares when the Americans do exactly what the Israelis are doing, but the Israelis get in trouble for it. Because no one bothers to even tell America, stop doing what you're doing, because they don't care. And this leads me into my final point of this episode, which I think is the most important, if I can be honest. We've talked a lot about the whole two-state solution, the possibility of peace, and all of this. You can go back into our catalog and look at the many episodes that we've done on the many attempts at peace that Israel has made in the 2000s, in the 1990s. There have been multiple two-state solutions put on the table by Israel and rejected every single time by the Arabs. And this is what leads to the issues we find in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. This half-finished plan from the Oslo Accords from the 1990s that were intended as a temporary stepping stone that hasn't changed in 30 years. And when I was recently watching the work of another pro-Israel influencer, he pointed out an idea that he had, which was very interesting, and it goes along this topic that we're talking about. He pointed out that this stalemate in the 1990s Oslo Accords that has never been resolved could be resolved if we cared a little bit less about international pressure and worried more about helping people on the ground. As most of my listeners probably know, Area A and Area B are under the Palestinian Authority control, and therefore Israelis have no control over what goes on in there. That's their own municipal and civil issues. However, Israel does have an opportunity to help people in Area C, which is under its own jurisdiction. That is Israeli land, according to the Oslo Accords. And so this influencer suggested that maybe Israel needs to stop trying to placate the world with this future Palestinian state that's never going to exist, and officially take control and annex Area C, give everybody who lives in there, who is willing, Israeli citizenship, and start to provide them with a good life. No more of this technically Palestinian Arabs living under the Palestinian Authority, but unfortunately they're not Israeli, so they need to get permits to get in. His idea was simply give all of these people residency in Israel, all the papers they need, they can come and go. It gets rid of the checkpoints scattered throughout Area C, and it immediately improves the lives of the people in Area C. Right now, because it's sort of disputed territory and Israel doesn't want to offend the Palestinian Authority, they don't provide electricity, water, infrastructure to these people who will eventually, if this deal ever gets made, be put into the Palestinian Authority country. Why would they want to be on the Israeli power grid or water system? So Israel's not going to waste its money by sending power and water to a place that will not be a part of Israel. And therefore, they live an unfortunately sadder life than those who live within the state of Israel. So this influencer is suggesting that we should give up the pleasantries, the pretending that they're going to have their own state, and simply officially take Area C and make it as good as the land of Israel. And therefore, the people inside should be much happier, well treated, and God willing, maybe not want to kill us as much. And for those people who want to continue to live under the Palestinian Authority and not Israel, you're free to leave. Go to Area B, go to Area A, you do you. We're taking this land. No more of this living in limbo situation. And of course, what is the world going to say? Ethnic cleansing. Kicking people out of their country. How dare you remove them from their homes? I'm sorry, you already say that now, and we haven't moved anybody. So in that case, why do we care what the world has to say if this is going to not only make Israel safer, but it's also going to make the Palestinian Arab lives better? There would absolutely be so many people from the UN to various countries to organizations and human rights groups, I use that term loosely, that will call Israel out immediately for this type of thing. But should we care? Because they already do call us out, and maybe when we do things that are better for the people on the ground, including ourselves, they'll have to realize that we were right in the end. I'm not holding my breath. But this Judea and Samaria idea, as crazy as it might sound, fits into the pattern of Israel not doing what it needs to do for itself and for the betterment of its own people because of international pressure, international condemnation, and just general hatred of Israel and everything they do. In the end, I'm not a military scholar. I'm not a politician. Thank goodness I don't have to make these decisions, whether it's with Judea and Samaria, how to respond to the Houthi rebels, how to end the war in Gaza and get all of the people back, or what the best way is to help the Druze minority in Syria from certain death. But what we can see here, and this is not a new phenomenon, this has been going on forever, is that Israel needs to stop caring about what the world is saying about them. They need to stop running everything they do through a filter of how are we going to look on the international world? What will the international world think? Because usually that leads to us not winning wars, not getting rid of our enemies, not helping people who need to be helped. Because God forbid the world might call us names that they're already calling us, even when we didn't do that. So maybe it's time for Israel to just give up this idea that the world is going to maybe like us enough if we do the right thing, or they're going to accept us and give us our space and our freedom and our self-determination if we act nicely enough to the people who hate us. This is never going to be a thing. It has been 77 years, and since day one, so many people have been against the Jewish people and against the Jewish state for no reason, including a BDS movement that happened against Israel before Israel even existed. Or as former Prime Minister Golda Meir put so succinctly, pointing out that the world suggests that Israel should just go back to the 1967 borders, and she asked a foolish question, which was, in 1967, they had those borders, and they started a war. There is no satisfying a world who wants nothing more than to see the Jewish people put back in their place as an oppressed minority, pushed back into the ghettos and the gutters, being exiled from country to country and mistreated. They will never accept seeing us on our 2 feet, standing strong and protecting ourselves and the people around the world who need it. If we continue to do the thing that the Jewish people are meant to do what is right, to be a light unto other nations, to help heal the world, we should do that and not care if the people hate us. Because in the end, they're going to hate us anyway. So why should we care? This has been another episode of the Jewish Diaspora Report. Don't forget to check us out on social media at jdr.podcast and check out some of our other episodes on your favorite podcast source. We'll see you next time.